Hi, welcome to this edition of Mugs and Hugs. I'm Heidi Marlinghouse.
And I'm Jennifer Osger.
And today we have a guest with us. This is Sophie. She's from a local high school in my area. Sophie, you want to say hi?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here in this Zoom room, I guess. Crazy times.
Yeah, so we're really excited to have you here today, Sophie, because Jen and I feel like hearing from youth and having a platform for youth to have a voice is extremely important. And we also feel like youth have a different perspective than some of us adults who have been set in our ways for a long time. And you guys come up with some really creative ideas and strategies, techniques to change things in the world. So we're excited to have you here today and ask you our Fast Five questions. I'm going to let Jen start off with the first question.
Great. So we're wondering, a way to introduce yourself is to just ask you, what do you consider to be your claim to fame and what brings you the most joy?
That's a really good question. So I'm a poet and a writer, and I write all sorts of different things. I love to tell stories and write poetry and do all those sort of verbally challenging things. It makes me really happy. And I've had some experiences where people have told me my poetry has really helped them when they've been in a hard time or brought them joy. And that's really moving and powerful for me. And that kind of makes me feel like that's like why I'm on earth, like to write poetry and stories that move people and help them. Um, because I feel like I've had some hard times in my life, and a lot of stories and other people's writing has helped me when I was in my hard times. So I want to be able to extend that to other people. And um, some things that just bring me joy. I love horses. I love to ride horses. That's something I'm really passionate about as well. I love going on walks in my neighborhood. I love cooking and baking. That's something I really like. And I also love Marvel movies. That's like my guilty pleasure, but I love them so much. And they make me so happy.
Well, what I love hearing is you saying with so much conviction and clarity why you feel you're here and your passions and your purpose. So that's very exciting for me to hear as a teacher, to know that your strengths, what brings you that joy, and to know that it's writing. I mean, it's very difficult sometimes to get kids excited about writing, and to know that you have that love, that makes that what you just said brought me joy.
Thank you. Yeah, it brings me joy too. And I love to think that like my writing can help someone across the world having a really hard time because of the internet and stuff. I don't really share my writing very many places. I try to get published when I can. I'm doing Scholastic this year, so fingers crossed. But um, I really love to write, and I hope other people feel the love I put into my writing, because I want them to feel that, because I feel like people really deserve more love.
And I had the pleasure of reading one of your poems. You sent me one of your poems earlier, Sophie, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to reading more from you. So this is just wonderful. And I heard you say just a minute ago that you feel like you have a way to share your poetry with people to help make a difference in their lives. And that's just a great segue into the next question. Our second question is, what has been your proudest moments where you felt like you were able to make a difference, or you were part of something that was making a difference for people in the world? And I know you have lots of passions, not just one and not just poetry. So, if maybe you can narrow that down to just one thing you want to talk about.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind almost immediately is I wrote a poem a while ago that was a very simple poem that was basically me sort of expressing the frustration and also the joy I feel with being American. And it was called Rebuild with Love, which was a Joe Biden campaign slogan. And it was this sort of hopeful pre-election poem of like, it was almost like a song, like a praise song for like what could happen. And it ends with, I haven't died yet because hope is a radical thing. And I entered that poem into Oregon state level contest, and I got third place in a category for poems under 30 lines by an author under 30 years old, which I think was pretty cool considering I was competing against college students and people with MFAs. And I'm really proud of that because I wrote a really passionate political poem that talked about like my mental health issues and my family and what it's like to be like privileged but also feel like you can't sit with that because there's so many people out there who don't have what you have. And that's just really important to me to like spread that awareness and message of like, if you have the means, do something, march, donate, do whatever you can to try to make the world a better place.
It's beautiful, Sophie. And I'm so glad to hear that you take it to the next level, that you actually enter your writing into these publications or competitions or whatever it may be, so that people can read it, and not just people but lots of people out there, anybody out there, really.
Yeah.
And congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I also did a smaller contest in Bend that was really inspiring for me because it had a youth contest. And in that youth contest, I was one of many creatively minded young people who entered my work. And that was so inspiring for me to see in my own town of people like me who want to create and make the world a better place and tell important stories. It was just so powerful.
It's great when you find your tribe, right?
Yeah.
And to know that there's other people who are aspiring to do make a difference and have their voice being heard.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, you're clearly a very passionate person, and sometimes our attentions might shift depending upon what's going on in the world, and we're just wondering, what are you most passionate about recently?
Well, there's two answers to that. One is kind of like the funny answer, and then the second is the serious answer. So, in the Marvel movies, there's a character, Bucky Barnes, who really resonates with me and who I relate to in a lot of ways, and who's just kind of like a very special character for me. And I've written like some fan-written stories about him and like his adventures in my own sort of canonical creation in this world I've developed in my own writing. And like through the process of writing that fan fiction, I've really realized how passionate I am about mental health issues, because that was sort of what the whole fanfic was about. It was about like this character's own struggle with sort of feeling broken and unfixable and like relying on psychiatric medication to feel normal, but not wanting to rely on psychiatric medicine, which is something very close to my heart. And also, I think this whole exploration I had writing this fan fiction that I'm still working on, I realized that I have the power to like change people's perceptions of like mental health issues and neurodiversity and all sorts of interesting and beautiful and challenging parts of the human brain and the mental experience, because so many people are different, so many people are ridiculed for being different, and I don't think that's how it should be at all. I think it should be differences should be celebrated, And if you can do something in your brain that other people can't do, celebrate it. And if you need help with some things other people can do better than you, like, it's not even a better than thing. It's a let the other people help you lift you up and support you. And I'm just really passionate about that. And I feel like this character and the fanfiction I've written about him has really guided me into a lot of my own self-discovery around my own activism. So I think that's pretty cool for a genre of writing that is usually dismissed. Yeah.
I love that, Sophie. When I was listening to you, I was thinking of another interview that we did a while back with Justine Safir. Remember this interview, Jen? And Justine is an educator who is all about celebrating differences. And I've watched her work with children, and she's just amazing, the way she can pull in all the different personalities and characteristics and whatnot, and find a place to highlight each child. And she said to us that, you know, differences are essential for the world to survive, because if we're all the same, we're actually not going to function.
Yeah.
And I loved it when she said that. So yeah, that just kept coming to my mind as you were talking. So our next question, after what are you passionate about, is really about how that journey began. But you talked about that with the whole Marvel series, and
Yeah.
you know how you got interested in that. So I'm gonna jump to the very next one after that, unless you have more you want to add.
Yeah, I have a little more I want to add, actually.
Okay.
So I wasn't always in that fandom, I guess you could say. I mean, I've evolved through a lot of different passions I've had in my life. Like, in the last 6 months, I was so obsessed with Post Malone. Like, he was my favorite human being alive, and I loved him so much. I still really like him, but not to that extent anymore. And when I was at my old school, which was a boarding school, I we were kind of in quarantine lockdown. Like, we couldn't go anywhere. We were all stuck with each other, and it was really rough. And some of the people who worked there were like, you know what? We're gonna make the best of this. We're gonna watch all the Marvel movies. And I had like never seen any of them before except for Black Panther. And I was so blown away. I was so in love with just the ridiculousness and the beauty and the crazy insanity of this like interlocking world. That just really resonated with me. And so many of the characters are like superheroes, but they're very human, and that I feel like I like that because I feel like we can be superheroes too in a lot of ways. Like, we don't need to have crazy abilities. We have the ability to be kind and try to make the world better. And I think that's something that's really important and a big takeaway that I learned from that. And this journey was spent with some of my best friends in the world, who some of them are still at that school. Some of them are now moved on and back at their houses doing who knows what. And I loved those people so much. I still love those people so much. And it was just a very special experience. I wrote a personal essay, I guess you could call it, about that experience called On Abnormality that I entered into Scholastic this year. And the gist of that essay is this experience at this school I went to taught me that, like, while I am mentally ill and I have issues and I'm different from a lot of my peers, I can still be loved and am worthy of love, and I'm worthy of that acceptance that I sought for so many years. And that essay kind of concludes with, now I know I'm not strange, I know I'm not abnormal, because all these other people out there who were at the school with me were just as strange as I was. And that meant the world to me.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. And, I wish you success. I hope it gets published through
Thank you.
Scholastic. And,
Yeah.
and if Scholastic turns out not to be the right fit, to not give up and go to other places and get it published elsewhere too. I mean, what a strong epiphany, and might your words help other people to get to that point of peace
Yeah.
and self-love. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
So this kind of segues in, like, you have such a strong voice and you're endeavoring to have your voice get out there to the multitudes. Let's just say you're in an elevator with one person. So rather than putting it out there for any potential, you can select one person to have a conversation with. And I'm wondering who you might choose and what conversation would you hope to engage them in?
That's a really difficult question, but right now I'm thinking I would want to talk to Greta Thunberg because she's a really big inspiration for me. She's my age and she's known around the world for her genius and her passion, and she just amazes me constantly with how articulate, how wise beyond her years she is. And that just makes me so happy that I'm in the same generation as someone like that. And also, I would just kind of want to ask her, like, so you're neurodiverse, you have really struggled with social aspects and peer acceptance, which I have struggled with as well when I was in middle school. And like, how do you manage when there are people out there on every corner of the internet eager to call you slurs, who think you're a stupid, depressed little child who shouldn't be speaking their mind and shouldn't be trying to change the world and help us not go extinct from the climate crisis? And I would just really want to hear what she has to say about like being like a young person whose voice matters and is heard, and how to survive that. Because I think if I had a public platform, I would love it for about 3 weeks, and then I probably would have a mental breakdown because I really want to be seen a certain way, and I want everyone to always like me, and I want to be accepted all the time. And if I didn't have that, then I don't know how I would deal. And she doesn't have that, but she trudges on and she makes change and she uses her voice, and she is humanity's conscience, honestly. Like, she's holding 7 billion, 8 billion people accountable for their actions that they barely see when they look in the mirror. And that just is amazing to me, and I would love to talk to her.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if you actually get that opportunity one day. I'm going to send that out into the universe. And, I would say
I like
that. Good. And, for as many people that malign her or mock her, there's so many other people who absolutely adore and appreciate her as well. And, if you're popular with everyone, like, are you really standing for something, right? There's got to be conflict to move the needle forward.
Yeah. And yeah, I love the thought of you actually meeting up with her one day, and I'm wondering if that might even be sooner than later. I want to know about it though. I want to be a fly on the wall in that conversation.
Yeah.
So I heard you talking a lot about, neurodiversity and acceptance, and how do we create an environment where, people can accept each other for their differences. And I got to tell you, that's one of the reasons I became a teacher in the first place. I struggled in my teen years. I have a family history of mental illness. And then in my teens, I started suffering from depression and had a very hard time fitting in middle school and high school. And in my 20s, I started searching for answers, searching for some kind of relief
Yeah.
in a healthy way. So I was too scared of, drugs and alcohol because that had been part of my family history. And I knew about my family's history. So I took a different method and went into spirituality and mindfulness practices and more of the neuroscience type thread. And so that's how I became a teacher, because I wanted to support kids in having more skill sets and more strategies to get through life. I wasn't just about academics, although I teach academics as well. I use my academics as a platform to teach them how to deal with difficult things. And today we have like growth mindset and grit and all that stuff being taught in classrooms. But I'm wondering, how might you bring this topic of neurodiversity and acceptance to your peers' attention so that it does make more of a difference than we're seeing right now?
I mean, I think from a very young age, we are all taught in this society that we do matter and we're different and we should be ourselves and we're very cool people. That's what kids' shows teach little kids, and that's what everyone sort of drills into their own child's brain from a very young age, unless they're growing up in a dysfunctional household. And that's really just a good thing. But it feels like the moment we enter school, there are this sort of like tribal us versus them mentality of like, okay, so we're going to have our cliques and our tribes and we're going to group together. And if you don't fit in this cookie cutter shape, we're going to just knock you out, like keep you away from us, like block you. And that's just of things of being blocked out. And I think people who are different deserve to be able to have like enough therapy and enough help so that they can become, if they have like more severe issues, they can become more happy with themselves through the therapy that they have. That's something that's really helped me, because when I was younger, I was really unhappy, disliked myself. And because of mindfulness and therapy and all sorts of wonderful things like that, I'm now at a point where I can like look in the mirror and not want to like barf. And that's really awesome. And I appreciate all the people who have helped me along the way for that. And I think every person, regardless of neurodiversity, deserves that support in their life. I don't know how like I could subsidize a government to do that. Like that is kind of an impossible task of like therapy and support for every single person born in our country. But I feel like it would take a lot of overhaul of our culture, at least, if we want to be more sustainable in that aspect. Like we need to treat each other like we have value. And if you disagree with someone politically, you disagree with someone politically. It's not the end of the world. Like you don't need to disvalue them as a human being because of that. And that's something I really needed to learn for a long time. And it was hard for me to learn, but I'm at a point now where I realize that every human being has inherent value that just grows with their life. And I think I've been watching a show, The Good Place, a lot. And in that show, it's about sort of humanity being good or bad at its very, very core. And time and time again, it's said that humans are able to grow. We might not be good from the way we start out or the way we live our first life on Earth, but who knows? Like, we'll be able to grow and change with, believe that we change for the better. And I think my peers could really, I'm not going to say that they could benefit from, because I know a lot of my peers at my current school are really trying to be open-minded and are so accepting, and I appreciate that so much. But at many high schools around the country, that's not the case at all. Like imagine being, like if I was a Black trans girl in Louisiana going to public high school, I probably would be physically attacked almost daily. That's just how it is in our country right now. That's the culture we have of disvaluing each other, especially people who are different. And I think that's so disgusting and unfair because we need to value each other. We need to see that everyone deserves what you deserve. Like, don't be selfish. Don't like spread it around. Like, give what you need, take what you need, and then give what you don't need. And I just think if we were more generous and community minded, our communities, our cities, our countries, our states, whatever, everything would be so much off, and our public discourse would just be so much smoother and kinder, and we wouldn't be at each other's throats constantly. And it's a hard, selfless thing. I want to argue with you because I care about you and you're my friend, you're my human being who I share this earth with. To have that kindness extended to you like I wish you would extend to me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and it made me think where does that come from, where you have a young person going into school and they're not being treated with kindness and appreciation. And the way you phrased it, it made me think, oh, well, can I extend to someone else what I haven't currently received from myself? And not
Yeah.
that it's any excuse, but it's definitely an explanation. And, that, very common adage, hurt people. And how is it that, a 15-year-old is not able to show love or compassion for someone who's not just like them? And why they
Yeah.
can't bridge that gap? And, did they not have that extended to them? Or, just what's going on that they lack that ability? And how can we fix that?
Yeah, I think that's really a good question. And I think it takes being really selfless. It's something I try to do every day, and I fail a lot of the time because I'm a pretty selfish person, honestly. Like, it's just how I am. And I want to challenge that how I am and how I've been comfortable for the rest of my life. So I fight that and I try to be kind to those around me and understanding. And sometimes I act spiteful and I do mean things because I'm a human and I screw up. And I think that's really rough and makes me really sad because I feel like I'm not upholding my values at that point. And when you're living against your values, it's just really sad and painful and it hurts a lot. And it's not a great feeling.
So I'm
Well,
hearing a lot around like self-compassion, and I know Jen and I have talked about that in the past, and that was something I didn't have as a teenager, and I don't think teenagers are really wired for it either. And there's not very many people teaching teens how to have self-compassion. Yet when I figured out how to have that, I was able to accept myself for my differences and for my faults and for my mistakes and for the fact that I'm a human being.
Yeah.
And once I figured out how to do that, I was much better at reaching out to others and being kind to others. Even though that had always been something that I believed in and the way I tried to live, I was able to do it with more ease and more authenticity once I found self-compassion.
I would agree with that. My journey was very similar. And I think that's a very common experience that's very meaningful. And I think that's just really cool.
Yeah. Sophie, you are wise beyond your years, I must say.
Oh, I mean, just the fact that you realize that you have core values. You know, as a teenager, to have that insight and awareness of yourself. You know, there are people who are having midlife crises and break down, and they buy a self-help book and try to put pieces together, and you're building your sense of concept. And I hear you, you know, becoming the person you want to become and affecting the change that you want to see. And you know, to my only thing is to say, you know, give yourself some grace every now and then to not be perfect, because if you were perfect, man, that would be intimidating for people who look up to you,
Yeah.
right? So to know that you're human, and sometimes you fall and sometimes you fail, and that's part of growth, and that's part of stepping into your purpose, right?
Yeah. And I just want to thank you guys for letting me have this platform to talk for a little bit, because I felt really honored that this was an opportunity for me. And also, like, I think you asked really insightful questions that were really helpful for me, just honestly, to process and to think about and answer. And for those of you who are watching, thank you for watching. And I think am really grateful for that. And I'm really happy that I got this chance to speak for a little bit. And that just means a lot.
Oh, I feel like crying. It's like
Yeah.
I'm kind of fighting it back. Sophie, you actually signed up to do this with us. We didn't find you, you found us. So, and you helped us formulate those questions. So I really appreciate you and all of your insights and your intelligence and your skills, and the fact that you were willing to come and do this with us. As we close out, we usually tell our audience how they can, find our speakers. And I'm going to say, look for Sophie in the Scholastic competition. See if you can find her writing there.
Yeah.
And if you really want to reach out and hear more from Sophie, then feel free to contact Jennifer or myself. We have our emails at the bottom of our images there, and we'll post it in our description as well. You're welcome to contact us, and we can help you get more information or continue the conversation if needed.
Thank you.
All right, signing
Thank
off.
you so much. It was a pleasure.